Hi everyone, glad you made it. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I was halfway through polishing my boots when the kitchen door swung open hard enough to hit the stopper. The smell of lemon cleaner mixed with roasted garlic and expensive perfume. That last one always showed up before she did. God, why does it smell like a janitor's closet in here? Whitney didn't wait for an answer. She never did. Her heels clicked across the tile, like she was walking a runway instead of our father's kitchen. The silk dress hugged her like it had a contract of its own. I caught the label when she turned something European, something that cost more than my monthly rent. I kept my head down and worked the cloth over the leather. Slow, even pressure. No streaks. She dropped a stack of plates next to me. Not gently. "Since you're already playing staff, you can handle these," she said, like she was doing me a favor. "The caterers are running late, and I'm not about to have generals walking into a mess." The plates were still warm. Grease clung to the edges. I set my boot aside and reached for them without looking at her. Whitney moved past me, opening cabinets, checking glasses, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. Every motion said the house belonged to her. It didn't, not legally, but that never mattered here. "Make sure the silverware is polished too," she added. "Last time you missed spots." Last time. Like this was a job I applied for. I rinsed the first plate and let the water run a second longer than needed. The sound helped. It filled the space where a response would have gone. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Slower, heavier. Arthur Pierce didn't rush for anyone. "There you are," he said, voice already warm before he even reached Whitney. "You look incredible." I glanced up just long enough to see him take her in. Approval was easy when it was her. "Grant's investors are going to be very impressed tonight," he continued. "That company of his? Smart move. Logistics is where the real money is now." Whitney smiled like she'd built it herself. "I told you he was different," she said. "Not like the usual crowd." Arthur nodded like that settled something important. His eyes shifted to me. The temperature dropped without warning. "You're still in that?" he asked. I looked down at my fatigues. "Clean, pressed, regulation." "Yes, sir." He sighed like I'd disappointed him personally. "We have high-level guests arriving tonight. People who matter. I don't need them wondering why there's this in the middle of my kitchen." "This didn't come with a name. I'll stay out of the way," I said. "That would be best," he replied. "Actually stay in here. Help the staff. It'll be less confusing." Whitney let out a small laugh, just enough for him to hear. Arthur turned back to her immediately. "Grant mentioned a new routing system. Something about cutting costs without sacrificing quality." "Brilliant." "Of course it is," Whitney said. "He doesn't miss." I dried my hands and picked up the next plate. They kept talking. Contracts, numbers, names dropped like currency. I recognized a few, not from dinners, from briefings. Whitney poured herself a glass of red wine, swirling it like she'd been trained for it. She leaned against the counter, watching me for a second too long. "You know, she said you could at least try to look presentable. Those things," she gestured at my uniform, "aren't exactly helping the family image." I didn't answer. She took a sip, then stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the wine over her perfume. "Actually," she said almost thoughtfully, "don't bother. It's kind of fitting." Her hand tilted. The wine missed my boots by an inch. Dark red spread across the tile, slow and deliberate. Whitney smiled. "Clean that up," she said, "since sweeping floors is all your clearance allows." Arthur didn't correct her. He didn't even look. I grabbed a towel from the rack and knelt down. The fabric soaked up the wine, quickly turning heavy in my hand. No reaction, no comment, just pressure and motion. Behind me, Whitney's heels clicked away. Her voice followed, already moving on to something else. I wrung the towel out in the sink and reached for another. That's when I saw it. A folder half open, sitting too close to the edge of the counter. Not kitchen paperwork, not anything that belonged near food. Contracting documents, clean print, official formatting, careless. Grant's name was stamped across the top. Below it, a series of numbers and routing details that didn't belong in casual conversation. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. I let my eyes pass over the page once. Then again, slower, long enough. Numbers stick when you train them to. I went back to the floor. The stain was almost gone now, just a faint shadow left behind. Arthur's voice carried from the next room, louder now. He was already telling someone how proud he was, not of me, never of me, ever of. Whitney laughed at something, light, effortless. I pressed the towel down harder than necessary, then stopped. There was nothing left to clean. I stood, rinsed the cloth, and hung it back exactly where it had been. From the doorway, I could see the dining room filling up. Suits, dresses, people who thought they were walking into a deal. They were. Just not the one they expected. I picked up my boots and set them on the counter. The leather caught the light perfectly. No marks, no stains, exactly how I liked it. I slipped them on, tightened the laces, and stood there for a second longer than needed. No one noticed. They never did. Right before I stepped out of the kitchen, I paused. Have you ever been in a room where everyone decided who you were before you even spoke? And no matter what you did, you stayed invisible, or worse, useful. Only when they needed something done. Comment below. And if you've ever been underestimated like that, make sure you subscribe, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one keeping score. I wiped the floor in silence. Whitney thought I was bowing to her. She didn't know I was memorizing the exact offshore routing number that would put her husband in federal prison. I didn't slow down when I left the house. I didn't look back either. By the time the gate closed behind me, the noise was already fading, laughter, glassware. Whitney's voice cutting through everything like it always did. It all disappeared the second I got into my car. The drive to Fort Braxley took just under 40 minutes. No music, no calls, just the routing number running on a loop in my head, clean and precise. I didn't write it down. I didn't need to. The base perimeter came into view through a low stretch of fog. Concrete barriers, reinforced fencing, armed guards, who didn't smile and didn't ask questions they didn't need answers to. This was my version of home. I flashed my credentials at the checkpoint. The guard scanned it, then straightened slightly. Evening, ma'am. Evening. No hesitation, no doubt. No one asking me to stay in the kitchen. The car rolled forward. The air changed the moment I crossed inside. Cooler, cleaner, controlled. I parked in a reserved slot near a building that didn't have a name on it, just a number. No windows on the lower levels, no signage. Inside, the first door required a keycard. The second needed a fingerprint. The third took a retinal scan. Each lock clicked open with a solid mechanical certainty. No guessing, no pretending. By the time I stepped into the operations floor, the sound hit me first. A low, constant hum. Server racks running at full load. Air systems pushing chilled airflow through tight corridors. Keyboards tapping in steady rhythm. No perfume, no wine, no fake laughter. Just work. Heads turned when I walked in. Not out of curiosity, out of awareness. Ma'am, one of the analysts said, already standing. At ease, I replied, setting my bag down on the nearest console. 3 rows of workstations, 12 analysts on shift. All cleared, all trained, all focused. This was my team. Pull up a secure node, I said. I need a clean trace on a financial routing number. No one asked why. One of them, Reyes, swiveled his chair and started typing immediately. Ready when you are. I recited the number from memory. He entered it, cross-referencing across multiple databases at once. Domestic banking logs, offshore registries, flagged transaction pathways. The system didn't take long. Routing hits offshore, Reyes said. Came in linked shell, but it's layered. Multiple pass-through accounts. Unwind it. Another analyst joined in, pulling up transaction histories. Lines of data filled the screen, transfers, timestamps. Account shifts designed to look random. They weren't random, they were sloppy. Patterns too clean, someone muttered. Same intervals, same amounts. Whoever set this up didn't expect anyone to look this close. They didn't, I said. Because in their world, no one ever did. Track the origin, I added. Reyes zoomed out, following the flow backward instead of forward. Got it, he said after a few seconds. Primary source is a defense contractor account. Registered under Davenport Logistics Group. Of course it was. Pull their active contracts. Another screen lit up. Procurement records, bids, approvals. Looks like they just secured a supply deal with Braxley, one of the analysts said. Aviation parts. Mid-level contract. Nothing major on paper. Expand it. The file opened deeper. Shipment manifests. Component lists. Titanium parts. Flight critical. I leaned closer to the screen. Cross-check the supplier, I said. A few more keystrokes. A pause. Then supplier doesn't exist, Reyes said. At least not in any legitimate registry. Run material specs against certified standards. The comparison came back fast and wrong. Density's off, someone said. Composition too. This isn't military-grade titanium. How far off enough to fail under stress? Silence settled over the room for a second. Not confusion, recognition. These parts go into aircraft, Reyes said quietly. I'm aware. Another analyst pulled up projected distribution. 5 trucks scheduled for delivery, she said. End of the week. Friday. Destination, I asked. Braxley main hangar. Right through the front gate. I straightened slightly, letting the information settle into place. Grant wasn't just cutting corners. He was moving counterfeit parts into a live military supply chain. For money, for how much, I asked. Reyes checked the financials again. Hard to say exact total, but based on these transfers, he's covering something big. Debt maybe, gambling, another analyst said. Pattern matches known markers. Large withdrawals, irregular deposits, offshore cycling. That tracked. Grant always liked risk. He just never liked consequences. Keep digging, I said. I want every transaction tied to this account mapped out. They nodded and got back to work. I moved to a separate terminal, pulling up the contract approval chain. Every deal like this needed sign-off, layers of verification, security clearance checks. Grant shouldn't have made it past the first gate, unless someone opened it for him. I scrolled through the digital signatures, names, ranks, authorization codes. Then I saw it. I didn't react right away. Didn't need to. The name sat there clean and official. Colonel Arthur Pierce, retired. Legacy access still active. Authorization override granted. I clicked into the signature details. Encryption matched. Timestamp aligned. No signs of external breach. This wasn't a hack. This was permission. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen for a second longer than necessary. Behind me, the room kept moving, data flowing, analysts working. Normal, except it wasn't. My father had just cleared a fraudulent contractor into a military supply chain. Not by accident. By choice. I replayed the conversation from earlier in my head. His voice, the pride when he talked about Grant's brilliant company. He knew. Or worse, he didn't care enough to check. Either way, the result was the same. He had signed off on parts that could fail mid-flight. Pilots wouldn't see it coming. They never do, Ma'am Reyes said, glancing back at me. You want us to flag this up the chain? I looked at the screen one more time. At the name, at the signature. Then I closed the file. Not yet, I said. The room paused just slightly. We need more, I continued. Full chain of custody. Every approval, every shipment detail. I want this airtight. Yes, ma'am. They went back to work. No questions. That's why they were here. I stood up, stepping away from the terminal. The hum of the servers felt louder now, like it was pressing in from all sides. Back at the house, everything had been noise without meaning. Here, every sound meant something. Every click, every line of code, every decision. I walked toward the exit, passing through the layers of security in reverse. Doors unlocking, then sealing behind me. By the time I reached the parking lot, the air felt different again. Colder, clearer. I got into my car but didn't start it right away. For a second, I just sat there, hands resting on the wheel. Whitney's voice echoed faintly in my head. Laughing, dismissing, certain she had already won. Arthur's voice followed. Disappointed, final. They thought this was about status, about who looked the part. They were wrong. This was about consequences. Real ones. I started the engine. My father had mortgaged his honor, his legacy, and the safety of my pilots just to keep my sister in designer shoes. I closed the laptop. The time for being the quiet daughter was over. I set the fork down before anyone asked me to pass something. Sunday dinners at that house always ran on the same script. Expensive food, louder opinions, and just enough tension under the surface to make everything taste slightly off. Tonight wasn't different. It was just sharper. Whitney sat across from me, already halfway through her second glass of wine. Different dress this time. Same energy. Like the room existed to confirm her choices. Grant sat beside her, relaxed in that way people get when they think everything is already handled. His jacket was draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled just enough to look like he worked for a living. Arthur sat at the head of the table. Always. He carved into his steak like it owed him something. No one spoke to me for the first 10 minutes. That part was normal. Then Whitney set her glass down a little too hard. Kendall, she said, finally acknowledging I existed. I looked up. We need a small favor, she continued, smiling like the word meant something harmless. Grant slid a folder across the table. It stopped right in front of my plate. Just a standard transfer authorization, he said. Internal logistics clearance. Should be routine for you. I didn't touch it right away. Didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. Open it, Whitney said like I needed instructions. I pulled the folder closer and flipped it open. Same formatting, same clean print, same company name, Davenport Logistics Group. The document was simple on the surface. Shipment approval, 5 transport trucks, scheduled entry, destination Fort Braxley, Friday. All it needed was a stamp, my stamp. I closed the folder. No, the word landed flat. No extra weight, no hesitation. Whitney blinked once like she didn't hear it correctly. "Excuse me," she said. "The parts are unverified," I replied. "I'm not signing off on that." Grant leaned back slightly, studying me now. "They've already been approved," he said. "Multiple levels, then you don't need me." Whitney laughed, but there was something tight behind it. "Oh, we need you," she said. "Your department handles the final pass, or did you forget what you do all day?" I held her gaze. I didn't forget. Grant tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "Look," he said, voice shifting into something more controlled. "We're on a timeline here. These trucks move Friday. Delays cost money. Then maybe you should have made sure the parts were real," I said. Silence hit the table like a dropped plate. Whitney's smile disappeared. "What did you just say?" she asked. I didn't raise my voice. "The material specs don't match certified standards," I said. "They fail under stress." Grant's jaw tightened for half a second before he smoothed it out. "You're overstepping," he said. "I'm doing my job." Whitney leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Your job," she repeated. "You stamp papers, that's it. Don't pretend you understand how any of this actually works." I didn't respond, because I understood exactly how it worked. Grant shifted in his seat, irritation starting to show. "Listen," he said, dropping the polite tone. "This isn't a discussion. We need that clearance and you're going to give it to us." No, the word didn't change. That seemed to bother him more than anything else. Whitney pushed her chair back slightly, frustration bleeding through now. "God, this is exactly what I mean," she said, turning to Arthur. "She does this every time, acts like she's better than everyone else when she's barely even in the room." Arthur hadn't said anything yet. He just sat there cutting his steak, chewing slowly. Then he set the knife down. "What's the problem?" he asked without looking at me. "Kendall thinks she's an expert now," Whitney said, refusing to help her own family over a basic approval. Arthur finally looked up. At me. "You can't sign it," he asked. "I won't." That got his attention. His expression shifted, subtle but immediate. "That wasn't the question," he said. "The parts are compromised," I replied. "They shouldn't be entering the base," Grant scoffed. "Based on what your instincts data?" Whitney rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she said. "You work in logistics. You don't run investigations." Arthur's hand came down on the table, hard. The plates rattled. Glasses shook. "That's enough," he snapped. The room went still. He pointed at me. "You don't get to sabotage your sister's family because you're unhappy with your own life," he said. "I'm not sabotaging anything. You're jealous," he continued, voice rising. "You've always been jealous. Whitney built something. She married well. She understands how this world works." I didn't move. He leaned forward, anger sharpening every word. "And you," he said. "You hide behind paperwork and act like it makes you important. It doesn't." Whitney sat back, watching, enjoying it. "You're a stain on the Pierce military legacy," Arthur said. "Do you understand that, a stain? While your sister elevates this family, you drag it down with this." He gestured vaguely at me. "My uniform, my existence." Grant stayed quiet now, letting Arthur do the work. "You will sign that document," Arthur said, "or you will leave this house and not come back." The room held its breath. I looked at him, really looked. At the man who measured worth in rank and reputation. At the man who had just sold both without realizing it. "No," I said. It wasn't louder. It didn't need to be. Arthur stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. "Then get out," he said. "Pack your things and get out of my house." Whitney didn't even try to hide the smile this time. Grant exhaled slowly, like something had finally resolved itself. "You heard him," Whitney said softly. I stood up, no rush, no hesitation, just movement. Arthur's voice followed me as I walked toward the hallway. "Don't bother coming back," he called out. "As far as I'm concerned, you're done here." I didn't stop. Whitney's voice came next, quieter, closer. She had followed me just far enough to make sure I heard it. "You'll always be a nobody," she whispered. I paused for half a second, not to respond, just to register it. Then I kept walking. My room hadn't changed. Same bed, same desk, same bag in the corner. I grabbed the duffel and started packing. Clothes, essentials, nothing extra. 10 minutes was enough. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked back down the hall. No one tried to stop me. Arthur stood near the dining room, arms crossed, Whitney beside him, Grant a step behind. A perfect picture. I walked past them without slowing down. The front door opened into cold air and rain. Real weather, not controlled, not curated. Behind me, Arthur's voice cut through the storm. "You're dead to me," he shouted. I stepped outside. The rain hit hard, soaking through fabric in seconds. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I packed my duffel bag in 10 minutes. As I walked out into the freezing rain, my father yelled that I was dead to him. I didn't look back because dead women don't have to follow family rules anymore. The rain was still coming down when I unlocked the door to my apartment. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just a key turning and a clean, quiet space on the other side. The place was small, 1 bedroom, 1 desk, 1 couch that didn't pretend to be comfortable. No decorations, no family photos, no reminders of anything I didn't choose to bring in. I dropped the duffel by the wall and took off my jacket. Water hit the floor in a steady line. For a second, I just stood there. No noise, no voices, no one telling me where I belonged. Good. I moved to the desk and powered up the laptop. Secure connection, encrypted channel, no delays. The screen lit up and I started building the timeline. Friday delivery, 5 trucks, aviation parts, counterfeit titanium, entry point Fort Braxley, main gate. I mapped everything out in clean lines. No guesses, no assumptions, just verified data. Every transaction, every approval, every gap they thought no one would notice. They didn't hide it well, they just assumed no one important would look. I leaned back slightly, reviewing the flow. Grant wasn't careful, he was desperate. That made him predictable. The phone buzzed on the desk. Whitney. I let it ring once, twice, then it stopped. A second later, a message came through. Whitney. You really walked out over paperwork. That's a new low even for you. I didn't respond. Another message. Whitney, don't worry, Grant handled it. Turns out real connections matter more than your little desk job. I kept reading without reacting. Whitney, Friday's still on schedule. Try not to embarrass yourself if you see us there. I locked the phone and set it face down. Then I opened a different channel. Secure line, direct. It connected on the first attempt. A single screen came up. No background noise, no delay. 4 stars on the caller, no introduction needed. You have something, he said. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I didn't waste time. Defense contractor Davenport Logistics Group, I said. They secured a supply contract with Braxley. Aviation components. He nodded once. Problem: counterfeit materials. Substandard titanium. Fails under stress. That got his attention. How far along shipment scheduled for Friday? 5 trucks. Entry through main gate. He leaned back slightly, processing. Evidence, he asked. Full financial trace, offshore routing, shell accounts. Supplier doesn't exist. Material specs confirmed below military standard. Who signed off? I paused half a second. Colonel Arthur Pierce. Retired. Legacy access override. Silence, not surprise. Calculation. He looked at me for a moment longer than necessary. You're certain, he said. Yes, sir. Another pause. All right, he said finally. We don't stop it yet. That matched my thinking. We let it come in, I said. We let it come in, he repeated. And we catch them in the act. Yes, sir. His tone didn't change. You'll run point on this, he said. Containment evidence capture coordination with MP, understood. And Pierce, he added, eyes steady. This stays tight. No leaks. It will. He gave a short nod. Then we finish it. The screen went dark. No extra words. No hesitation. That was why I respected him. I closed the laptop and looked at the timeline again. Now it wasn't just a case. It was an operation. The phone buzzed again. Whitney, I flipped it over this time. Whitney. You should have seen Dad's face after you left. Honestly, I think you did us a favor. Another message came right after. Whitney, Grant pushed everything through this morning. Clean. Easy. Almost like you were never involved. I read it once, then I set the phone aside. They thought they had already won. That made this easier. The next few days moved fast. Inside the base, everything stayed quiet on the surface. No alerts, no flags raised. Underneath it was different. My team worked in controlled layers, tracking shipments, tagging routes, watching every movement tied to Davenport logistics. We didn't interfere, we didn't warn, we watched. By Wednesday, we had full visibility. By Thursday, we had control. GPS trackers went on the trucks without anyone noticing. Entry protocols were adjusted. Response teams were briefed without details that could leak. No one outside the operation knew what was coming, not even the people walking straight into it. Thursday night, I stood in my apartment reviewing the live feed. 5 trucks, all moving, on schedule. Grant didn't deviate. He couldn't afford to. The phone buzzed again. I didn't need to check, but I did anyway. Whitney had posted something publicly this time. A photo, black car, clean lines, expensive enough to make a point. Her reflection in the window smiling like nothing could touch her. The caption was simple. Securing the bags. VIP access only. I stared at it for a second. Then I closed the app. Across the room, my dress uniform hung ready. Pressed. Perfect. Every line exactly where it needed to be. I stepped over, adjusting the collar slightly. No wrinkles. No mistakes. Unlike them. I checked the time. Less than 12 hours. Everything was in place. Every piece exactly where it needed to be. No improvisation left. Just execution. I turned off the lights and stood there in the dark for a moment, not thinking about Whitney, not thinking about Arthur, just the operation. The trucks would reach the gate. They would expect clearance. They would expect control. They would expect the system to work in their favor. They were wrong. They thought they had outsmarted the system. They didn't realize the system wasn't a computer program. The system was me. The air smelled like diesel and rain before the convoy even came into view. Low clouds pressed down over Fort Braxley, turning everything a dull gray. The kind of morning that made people move slower without realizing it. The kind of morning where details stood out more than usual. I stood just off the primary checkpoint, a clipboard in one hand, standard fatigue zipped clean to the collar. No insignia visible that didn't belong there, no reason for anyone to look twice. That was the point. The guard station to my left stayed quiet. 2 MPs on rotation. Alert but relaxed enough to look routine. Anyone watching would see a normal morning at the gate. Nothing about this was normal. A low rumble built in the distance. Engines, heavy ones, right on schedule. 5 trucks came into view first. Large transport rigs spaced evenly, moving in controlled formation. Clean exteriors. No markings that would draw attention. They looked like any other supply convoy heading into a base. They weren't. Behind them, cutting through the gray like it had somewhere better to be, was the car. Black, polished, out of place. The Maybach slowed as it approached the checkpoint, its surface reflecting the dull sky in smooth lines. It didn't belong here. It wasn't built for mud or diesel or anything that didn't come with valet parking. But it led the convoy like it owned the road. The truck stopped first, air brakes hissed, engines idled. The Maybach rolled forward, stopping exactly where it expected to be processed. I didn't move. One of the MPs stepped forward, standard protocol, neutral expression, controlled posture. The rear window of the Maybach slid down halfway. Perfume hit before the voice did. Sharp, floral, expensive enough to try and overpower everything else. It didn't. Whitney leaned toward the opening, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. Perfect makeup. Perfect control, like she was stepping into a deal, not a military checkpoint. Then she saw me. For a second, her expression didn't change. It just paused. Then she laughed. Out loud, not subtle, not contained. "Are you serious?" she said, turning slightly toward Grant before looking back at me. "They've got you working the gate now." Grant leaned over just enough to see past her. His smirk came slower, more controlled. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. I didn't respond. The MP stood in position, waiting. Whitney leaned further out the window, looking past me like I was part of the scenery. "Excuse me, Corporal," she said, voice shifting into something polished and dismissive at the same time. "Can you remove this clerk? We have a multi-million-dollar meeting with the base commander, and her presence is killing my mood." The word clerk hung in the air for a second. Familiar. Grant reached into his jacket and pulled out a badge. Clean, official. The kind that usually made doors open without questions. He held it up just enough for the guard to see. "Davenport Logistics," he said. "We're cleared for entry. Full authorization." The MP looked at the badge, then at the trucks, then at me. Didn't move. Whitney tilted her head, slightly, irritation creeping in. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Still nothing. Behind the Maybach, the trucks idled. Drivers stayed in their seats. engine steady, no one stepped out. They were waiting for clearance. Grant lowered the badge slowly, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Look," he said. Tone tightening, "We're on a schedule. You can verify whatever you need to verify, but we're not sitting here all morning." I shifted my weight slightly, flipping a page on the clipboard like I was checking something routine. Names, numbers, times, all of it already confirmed. Whitney watched me, the amusement still there but thinner now. "You know," she said, "this is actually kind of perfect. You always wanted to be useful. Now you finally are." I kept my eyes on the page. "Step out of the vehicle," I said. Grant let out a short laugh. "Not happening," he replied. Whitney leaned back in her seat, crossing her arms loosely. "Sweetie, I don't think you understand how this works," she said. "We don't get out of the car for people like you." The MP didn't react, didn't intervene, didn't repeat the order, because it wasn't his order to repeat. Grant tapped the steering wheel, once impatient. "We're cleared," he said again, holding up the badge like it should fix everything. "You can call it in if you need to, but we're going through." I looked up from the clipboard. Finally. Whitney met my eyes, expecting something. Frustration, pushback. Maybe even a raised voice. She got none of that. Just eye contact. Steady, unreadable. The kind she never knew what to do with. For a second the air shifted. Not enough for her to notice. Enough for everyone else. One of the MPs behind the checkpoint adjusted his stance slightly. Not obvious. Just ready. Grant noticed that. His smirk faded just a fraction. "What's going on?" he asked, more to the space than to me. I didn't answer him. Whitney leaned forward again, irritation winning out now. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We don't have time for whatever this is. Either clear us or get someone who actually matters out here." The trucks idled behind them, engines rumbling under the weight of what they carried. 5 trucks, counterfeit parts, one signature that shouldn't exist, one mistake they didn't even know they made. Rain started to fall again, light at first, then steady. Drops hit the hood of the Maybach, sliding down the polished surface in clean lines. Whitney glanced up, briefly annoyed. "This weather is unbelievable," she muttered. Grant shifted in his seat, looking past me, now scanning the checkpoint like he expected someone else to step in. No one did. Because everyone who mattered was already here. The MP at the window didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. He just looked at me, waiting. The gate guard didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just looked at me, waiting for the order that was about to end my sister's life as she knew it. I didn't repeat the order. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain anything. I just looked at Whitney, really looked at her, at the confidence that had never been tested, at the certainty that the world worked exactly the way she thought it did, at the assumption that everyone around her existed on a lower level. She was still waiting for me to react, to argue, to justify, to fold. I didn't give her any of that. Instead, I reached up and tapped the comms unit resting just behind my ear. Small movement, easy to miss. Except no one here missed anything. Whitney's eyes tracked it, her expression tightening just a little. "What are you doing?" she asked. I held her gaze. "Gate 4, I said quietly. "Flight compromised. Initiate Protocol 0. There was no delay, no countdown. The world didn't ease into it. It snapped. A deafening crunch tore through the air as the steel anti-ram barricades exploded up from the asphalt. The sound wasn't just loud, it was violent. Metal slamming into locked position with enough force to shake the ground under our feet. The Maybach jerked as the barriers sealed behind it, cutting off any exit. The trucks didn't have time to react. One of them rolled forward half a foot before stopping hard, boxed in on all sides. Then the alarms hit, sharp, relentless, not a warning, an alert. Red strobes lit up the entire checkpoint, flashing in tight intervals that turned everything into snapshots. Movement, faces, fear. Whitney froze. For a second, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Then it started to register. What is this?" she said, voice no longer smooth. Grant's head snapped toward the rearview mirror, then back to the barricades. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. No one answered him, because they were already moving. From both sides of the checkpoint, military police stepped into view. Not 2, not 4, dozens. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They moved with purpose. Weapons up but controlled. Rifles held low and ready, angled just enough to make the point clear without escalating past protocol. Boots hit pavement in synchronized rhythm, surrounding the convoy in a tightening circle. The drivers in the trucks started to panic. Doors opened, voices raised. "Stay in the vehicle," one of the MPs barked, voice cutting clean through the noise. Whitney turned sharply back toward me. "This is a mistake," she said quickly. "Too quickly. There's been some kind of mix-up." Her voice was thinner now. Grant tried to recover faster. He shoved the door open and stepped out of the Maybach badge already in his hand. "All right, enough," he said, forcing authority into his tone. "You've made your point. Call this off." No one moved. He walked toward the nearest MP, holding the badge up like it should reset the situation. "Davenport Logistics. We are cleared for entry. Whatever this is, you're interfering with a federal contract." The MP didn't even look at the badge. Grant hesitated for half a second. Then he turned back to me. "Fix this," he said, voice dropping the last layer of patience. "Now." I didn't move, didn't respond. The red lights kept flashing, washing over his face in sharp intervals. Confidence, confusion, the first hint of something else. Whitney stepped out of the car more slowly, heels sinking slightly into the damp ground. She looked around like the scene might rearrange itself if she gave it enough time. "This is insane," she said. "Do you have any idea who we're meeting here?" No one answered, because it didn't matter. The circle tightened. 2 MPs moved behind Grant close enough to make their presence clear without touching him. Another group positioned near the trucks, covering every angle. No gaps, no exits. Grant's breathing changed. Subtle but there. He looked at the barricades again, then at the MPs, then back at me. "What did you do?" he asked. Not a demand this time, a question. Whitney followed his gaze, back to me, really seeing me now, not the uniform, not the clipboard, me. Her expression shifted, slow at first, then all at once. "What did you do?" she repeated, voice lower. I took one step forward, close enough that she didn't have to lean to hear me, close enough that she couldn't pretend I was background noise anymore. "You asked to be cleared," I said. My tone didn't change. Calm, flat, final. "This is the clearance process." Behind them, one of the truck drivers tried to climb down too fast, slipped, hit the ground hard. An MP was on him instantly, weapon steady, voice sharp. "Stay down." The alarms didn't stop. The lights didn't slow. Everything stayed exactly where it was supposed to be, controlled. Whitney's hands hovered at her sides like she didn't know what to do with them. "This is illegal," she said. "You can't just—" I said. She stopped talking. Grant looked like he wanted to say something else, something louder, something that would take control back. He didn't. Because there was nothing left to grab. For the first time since I'd seen him, he didn't have the upper hand. He didn't even have the illusion of it. The convoy sat locked in place. 5 trucks full of evidence. 1 car that didn't belong here. 2 people who thought they controlled the situation. They didn't. They were inside it. Whitney's smirk didn't just fade. It broke. Not all at once, piece by piece. But the real shift, the one she couldn't process yet, was still coming. Because this wasn't the part where things ended. This was the part where they started to understand. In the distance, engines cut through the sound of the alarms. Different vehicles, heavier, more deliberate. Black SUVs rolled toward the checkpoint in a tight formation, moving with the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. Grant saw them first. His posture changed. Hope. That was new. Whitney followed his line of sight, her expression snapping back into something close to relief. "There," she said quickly. Finally, she straightened slightly, smoothing her dress like that would reset everything. "They're here," she added almost to herself. I didn't turn to look. I didn't need to. I already knew who was stepping out of that vehicle. Whitney's smirk didn't just fade. It shattered. But the real horror didn't set in until the black SUVs arrived, and the man she thought she was meeting stepped out. The engines cut and the doors opened in sequence. Black SUVs, clean lines, government plates that didn't need explaining. The first door opened and polished shoes hit wet pavement. Whitney straightened immediately, like someone had flipped a switch. Her shoulders went back, chin up. That familiar smile started to rebuild itself, piece by piece. "There we go," she said under her breath, loud enough for Grant to hear. "Finally, someone who knows what they're doing." Grant didn't respond. He was still watching the MPs, still calculating. The second SUV door opened. Arthur stepped out. He adjusted his coat before his eyes even lifted, already preparing to walk into what he thought was a win. The kind of moment he lived for, standing next to success, taking credit for proximity. Then he saw it. Really saw it. Grant wasn't standing in control of anything. He was bent forward, hands forced onto the hood of the Maybach 1MP, holding his wrist in a firm practiced grip while another secured restraints around it. Metal clicked. Clean. Final. Whitney's smile didn't disappear this time. It froze. Arthur stopped mid-step. "What is this?" he demanded, voice cutting through the alarms. No one answered him, because he wasn't the one anyone was waiting on. He moved faster now, anger replacing confusion. "Unhand him," he snapped, heading straight toward Grant. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" One of the MPs shifted slightly, blocking his path without touching him. "Sir, step back." Arthur didn't. "I said release him," he repeated louder now. "This is a federal contractor under my authorization." That word hung in the air. Authorization. I watched him say it like it still meant something, like it still carried weight. Behind him, Whitney stepped closer, her voice sharp and brittle. "This is insane," she said. "You're detaining the wrong people. We have a meeting with the base commander." She turned, scanning the SUVs like she was looking for someone to fix it. "He's right there," she said, suddenly spotting movement from the second vehicle. "This will get sorted out." The door opened. 4 stars stepped out. No rush. No wasted motion. The air shifted again, but this time it wasn't loud. It was quiet. Controlled. The kind of quiet that made people stop talking without knowing why. Arthur turned toward him immediately, relief flashing across his face. "General," he called out, stepping forward. "Thank God. There's been some kind of misunderstanding here. My daughter," he pointed at me without looking, "has caused a scene at your gate. I suggest you have her removed before this escalates any further." The general didn't stop, didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that Arthur had spoken. He walked past him, just past him. Arthur faltered his words, cutting off mid-sentence. Whitney tried next. "Sir," she said, quickly stepping into his path, her tone switching to polished urgency. "There's clearly been a mistake. We were invited here." He didn't slow down, didn't look at her, didn't see her. Grant twisted slightly against the MP's hold, trying to regain some version of control. "General, I have clearance," he said. Voice tight. "You need to nothing." The general walked past all of them, past Whitney, past Grant, past the entire situation they thought they were at the center of. And then he stopped, right in front of me. The alarms were still going, the lights still flashing, rain still falling in steady lines across the pavement. But in that space, it all felt distant. He looked at me once, sharp, focused. Then his posture shifted, clean, precise. He brought his hand up in a crisp, flawless salute. "Area secured, Lieutenant Colonel Pierce," he said. "Awaiting your orders." Silence hit harder than any of the alarms. Whitney didn't move, didn't breathe. Her eyes snapped to me, then to him, then back again, like she was trying to force the scene into something that made sense. It didn't. Grant stopped struggling. Not because he chose to, because he understood. Too late. Arthur stood there completely still. His face didn't shift right away. It cracked, slowly, like something breaking from the inside. He looked at me again, but this time it wasn't dismissal. It was recognition. Not of who I was to him, of what I was, of what I had been the entire time. His knees bent slightly, just enough to catch himself before he lost balance. I returned the salute. Just as clean, just as precise. Then I lowered my hand and stepped forward. The folder was already in my grip. The same one Grant had left open on the kitchen counter. The one he thought no one important would ever see. I flipped it once and tossed it onto the hood of the Maybach. It landed flat, solid, impossible to ignore. "Fraudulent contracting," I said, voice even. "Counterfeit aviation materials. Unauthorized access to military clearance systems." Each word landed exactly where it needed to. Grant stared at the folder like it might disappear if he didn't acknowledge it. It didn't. Whitney shook her head once, quick and sharp. "No," she said. This isn't." She stopped, because there was nothing to argue against. Arthur looked at the folder, then at me, then at the insignia on my chest. Silver oak leaf, clear, unmistakable. For 20 years, he had measured people by rank, by status, by the symbols they wore. And now the only one that mattered was standing right in front of him. On me. "You?" He started, but the word didn't finish, because there was no version of this where he came out intact. Whitney took a step back, then another. Her heels slipped slightly on the wet pavement, but she didn't notice. Her entire world had just shifted and she didn't know where to stand anymore. Grant didn't say anything, didn't move, didn't fight, because for the first time he understood exactly how deep he was in, and exactly who had put him there. I looked at the general. Secure the convoy, I said. Full inventory, chain of custody, and immediate transfer to federal holding. Yes, ma'am. No hesitation. No questions. Orders moved fast after that. MPs shifted positions. Drivers were pulled from trucks. Equipment was catalogued. Everything locked down in controlled motion. The operation was complete. All that was left was fallout. Arthur's eyes didn't leave me, not once. Like if he looked away, he could pretend this wasn't real. He couldn't. My father looked at the silver oak leaf pinned to my chest. For 20 years, he had worshipped rank, and he finally realized he had thrown away the only child who actually earned it. The room was cold, not uncomfortable, not dramatic, just controlled. Clean lines, neutral walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs on one side, one on the other, no windows, no distractions. Grant sat across from me, hands cuffed in front of him this time, instead of behind his back. Standard procedure for questioning, minimal risk, maximum control. He looked different without the suit jacket, without the car, without the illusion, smaller, not physically, structurally. You don't have to do this, he said. His voice was steady, but it didn't carry weight anymore. Not in this room. I already did, I replied. He leaned forward slightly, like proximity might change something. This is business, he said. You're blowing it out of proportion. I didn't answer, because there was nothing to correct. He shifted again, trying a different angle. You think they won't look at you too, he added. You're connected to this. Same name, same family, that word again. Family. I watched him for a second longer than necessary. Your company moved counterfeit aviation components into a live military supply chain, I said. You used falsified documentation and unauthorized access to bypass federal safeguards. He exhaled sharply. Allegedly, documented, I corrected. Silence. He leaned back, jaw tightening. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I replied. You already did. The door opened behind me. 2 agents stepped in. No rush, no noise. Time, one of them said. I stood up without looking back at Grant. He didn't call after me, didn't try again. Because somewhere between the gate and this room, he understood. This wasn't something he could talk his way out of. 20 years was the number on the table. He knew it. The next room was the same, different person. Whitney didn't sit the way Grant did. She leaned back, arms crossed posture, still trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. Her hair was still perfect. Her makeup wasn't. Small cracks, subtle, but real. You look busy, she said when I walked in. Same tone. Almost. I took the seat across from her. Your accounts have been frozen, I said. All associated assets are under federal review. She laughed once. Short, that's temporary, she said. You can fix that. I didn't respond. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You don't actually think this sticks, she continued. Do you have any idea who we know? Yes, I said. That answer didn't land the way she expected. They'll sort it out, she said. They always do. No, I replied. They won't. The confidence slipped. Just a little. She leaned forward now, elbows on the table. This is insane, she said. Over what some paperwork issue you're doing this to your own family. There it was again. Family, I didn't react. She watched me, waiting for something to shift. When it didn't, her tone changed. Less sharp, more direct. You can stop this, she said. Right now, just tell them it was a misunderstanding. No, the word didn't need anything else. Her lips pressed together. You're serious, she said quietly. Yes. Silence filled the space between us. For the first time since I'd known her, Whitney didn't have a move ready. Not a good one anyway. The door opened again. Arthur stepped in. He didn't look like himself. The posture was still there, but the structure behind it was gone. No command, no authority. Just a man trying to stand in a room that didn't recognize him anymore. He looked at Whitney first, then at me, then back at the table like it might offer him something. They told me, he said slowly, that my access has been suspended. No one responded. They're reviewing my pension, he added. My record. He said the word record like it was something solid. It wasn't. Whitney turned toward him. Dad, tell her to fix this, she said quickly. This is out of control. Arthur didn't move. Didn't speak right away. When he finally looked at me, there was no anger left. Just something quieter. You have influence here, he said. You can adjust the outcome. No, I said. His jaw tightened. This doesn't have to destroy everything, he said. We can handle this internally. No, the room held that word for a second. Whitney's voice cut through it. Why are you doing this? She demanded. We're your family. There it was, not strategy, not control, just the word. I stood up, slow, deliberate, buttoned my jacket with both hands, making sure the fabric sat exactly where it was supposed to. Then I looked at both of them. Family is the people who cover your blind spots in a firefight, I said. You didn't want a daughter, you wanted an audience. And you didn't want a sister, you wanted a servant. I'm neither. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. The hallway outside was quiet. Same controlled lighting, same clean lines, everything exactly where it should be. I stepped out of the building into open air. The storm was gone. No clouds, no rain, just a clear sky and a steady breeze that didn't carry anything with it. A jeep idled near the curb. Reyes was in the driver's seat, 2 others from the team in the back. No uniforms on display. No need. My people. They didn't ask questions, didn't need explanations. Just a nod as I approached. I got in. The door shut with a solid click. No hesitation. No looking back. The building stayed behind us as we pulled away, shrinking in the rear view until it disappeared completely. No noise followed. No voices. No unfinished business. Just open road. The storm was over. I didn't walk out of that building thinking I had won. That's not how it felt. There was no rush, no satisfaction in the moment, no sudden sense of relief. Just silence. The kind that comes after something ends for real. People think moments like that are loud, that there's some kind of emotional release when everything finally flips in your favor. There isn't. It's quiet. Because by the time things fall apart on the outside, they've already been broken for a long time on the inside. And that's the part no one talks about. I didn't suddenly become strong the day I said no at that table. I didn't suddenly become confident the day I stood at that gate. I became dangerous the day I stopped believing what they told me about who I was. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, through years of being ignored, talked over, reduced to whatever role made things easier for everyone else. I got used to it. That's the part people don't like to admit. You don't always recognize toxic behavior when it's consistent. You normalize it. You adjust to it. You convince yourself it's just how things are. Because it's easier than questioning everything. It's easier than realizing the people who are supposed to support you are the same ones holding you back. I wasn't quiet because I didn't have anything to say. I was quiet because I learned early that speaking up didn't change anything. So I adapted. I watched. I listened. I paid attention to what actually mattered. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to be seen by people who had already decided not to look. That was the first real lesson. Not everyone deserves access to who you are. That sounds simple, but it's not. Because when it's family, the rules feel different. You're expected to stay, to tolerate, to forgive without question. You're told that loyalty means endurance. It doesn't. Loyalty without respect is just control with a better name. I stayed longer than I should have. Not because I didn't know something was wrong, because I thought I could outwork it, outperform it, earn my place in a system that never planned to give it to me. That's the second lesson. You can't earn respect from people who benefit from you having none. It doesn't matter how capable you are, how disciplined, how patient. If someone only sees you as useful when you're small, they will never reward you for standing up. They will punish you for it. And when that happens, most people fold. Not because they're weak. Because they've been trained to. I almost did. More than once. It would have been easier to sign that paper. Easier to stay at that table. Easier to keep playing the role they gave me. That's what most people do. They pick comfort over clarity. They choose temporary peace over long-term consequences. But here's the problem. Comfort built on silence doesn't last. It just delays the cost. And the longer you wait, the higher that cost gets. For me, it wasn't just about them. It was about what they were willing to risk. Lives. People who would never know their names. Pilots who would trust equipment that should have never made it past inspection. That's where it stops being personal. That's where it becomes real. And once you see that clearly, you don't get to pretend anymore. That was the moment everything shifted. Not at the gate. Not in the interrogation room. earlier. When I realized this wasn't just about how they treated me, it was about what they were capable of doing when no one stopped them. That's when silence stops being neutral. It becomes a decision. And I decided I wasn't going to be part of that. Not quietly, not conveniently, not at all. That's the third lesson. There's a difference between being calm and being passive. I was calm the entire time. I never raised my voice. I never argued. I never tried to convince them they were wrong, because I didn't need to. I wasn't there to win an argument. I was there to end the situation. That's something most people misunderstand. They think power comes from proving a point. It doesn't. Power comes from controlling the outcome. And you don't do that by reacting. You do it by preparing. Everything that happened at that gate started long before anyone showed up. It started with paying attention, with remembering details, with knowing when to act and when to wait. That's not dramatic. It's discipline. And it's something anyone can learn. You don't need a title. You don't need authority. You just need to stop underestimating your ability to think clearly when it matters. Because most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they react too fast. They let emotion drive timing. They speak when they should observe. They confront when they should prepare. I didn't. And that made all the difference. But here's the part that matters most. None of this was about revenge. It looked like it from the outside. It probably still does. But revenge is emotional. This wasn't. This was correction. This was accountability. This was the natural outcome of decisions they made over and over again without thinking there would ever be consequences. I didn't create those consequences. I just made sure they couldn't avoid them. That's a hard line to understand if you've never been in that position, because people will always try to simplify it. They'll say you went too far. They'll say you should have handled it differently. They'll say family should come first. But those are the same people who have never had to choose between doing what's right and keeping the peace. Those are the same people who have never been placed in a position where silence costs more than action. I was, and I made my choice. Not because it felt good, because it was necessary. That's the final lesson. You don't wait for permission to respect yourself. You decide. And once you do, everything else changes. Not immediately, not easily, but permanently. Because the moment you stop accepting less than what you deserve, the people who benefited from that version of you lose their position. And when they lose it, they don't adjust. They react. They push back. They try to pull you back into the role you left. That's normal. That's expected. And it's exactly how you know you made the right decision. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost access to a system that only worked when I stayed small. There's a difference. And once you understand that difference, you stop trying to fix things that were never designed to include you in the first place. I didn't walk away from that situation with some dramatic realization that everything in life was suddenly clear. What I walked away with was simpler, clarity about what I would and wouldn't tolerate. And that's where most people get stuck. Because knowing something is wrong and actually doing something about it are two very different things. It's easy to recognize toxic behavior when you're watching someone else go through it. It's obvious from the outside. You can point at it, name it, break it down, but when you're inside it, it doesn't feel that clean. It feels complicated. It feels layered. It feels like if you just handle it a little better, adjust a little more, stay a little quieter, things will eventually fix themselves. They don't. That's the first thing you need to understand. Situations like that don't improve with more effort from you. They improve when you change the terms completely. That's what boundaries actually are, not arguments, not emotional reactions. Not long explanations where you try to get someone to finally understand your point. Boundaries are decisions. Clear, controlled, consistent. They don't require agreement from the other person. They don't need approval. They don't even need to be fully understood. They just need to be enforced. That's where most people hesitate. Because enforcement feels uncomfortable. It creates tension. It disrupts the dynamic everyone has gotten used to. But that discomfort is the point. If setting a boundary doesn't change the dynamic, then it wasn't a boundary, it was a request. And requests can be ignored. I didn't sit at that table asking them to respect my decision. I made the decision, and I accepted the outcome that came with it. That's the difference. A lot of people want to set boundaries without losing anything. They want to be respected and still be accepted by the same people who never respected them to begin with. That doesn't happen, not in real situations. When you change your role, the system reacts. People push back. They question you. They try to make you feel like you're overreacting, like you're the problem. That's not a sign you're wrong. That's a sign the dynamic is shifting. And when it shifts, you get to see something important: who adjusts and who doesn't. The ones who respect you will recalibrate. They may not like it at first, but they'll adapt. The ones who don't will resist. They'll escalate. They'll try to pull you back into the version of yourself that was easier for them to control. That's your confirmation, not your doubt. The second thing people misunderstand is power. Most people think power is loud, that it's about being dominant, being assertive, being the one who wins every argument. That's not power, that's visibility. Power is quieter than that. Power is knowing when not to respond. Power is understanding the situation better than the people involved in it. Power is controlling your reactions so no one else can use them against you. I didn't out-argue anyone in that house. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to convince them they were wrong, because none of that would have changed anything. They weren't operating on logic. They were operating on assumptions. Assumptions about who I was. Assumptions about what I could do. Assumptions about what I would tolerate. I let them keep those assumptions, right up until the moment those assumptions stopped working. That's strategy. And strategy matters more than emotion, especially in situations where the other side isn't playing fair. If you're dealing with someone who manipulates, dismisses, or controls, reacting emotionally gives them leverage. It gives them something to work with, something to redirect, something to twist. If you stay controlled, you remove that leverage. You force everything to exist on your terms. That doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you don't let what you feel dictate what you do. There's a difference. The third thing you need to understand is timing. Most people act too early or too late. They either confront a situation before they understand it, or they wait so long that the situation controls them. Neither works. Timing is about preparation. It's about having enough information to act effectively, not just emotionally. When I saw that routing number, I didn't react immediately. I didn't confront them. I didn't expose anything on the spot, because that wouldn't have solved the problem. It would have created noise. Instead, I waited. I verified. I built a complete picture of what was actually happening. So when I acted, there was no room for denial, no room for spin, no room for escape. That's what you should aim for in your own life. Not dramatic confrontations, not impulsive decisions. Clear, informed actions that lead to real outcomes. And that applies to more than just extreme situations. It applies to everyday life, work, relationships, family. If someone constantly disrespects your time, you don't argue about it every time it happens. You change how accessible you are. If someone dismisses your input, you don't fight for their validation. You stop offering it in the same way. If a situation keeps putting you in a position where you have to compromise your standards, you don't keep adjusting. You step out of the situation. That's how you regain control, not by forcing others to change, but by refusing to stay in patterns that don't work for you. That's practical. That's realistic. And that's something anyone can do regardless of their position. Because at the end of the day, you don't need authority to make decisions about your own life. You don't need permission to stop participating in something that's costing you more than it's giving you. You just need to be honest about what's actually happening and willing to act on it. That's where most people hesitate, not because they don't know, because they do. They hesitate because action comes with consequences. It changes relationships. It shifts expectations. It forces people to respond in ways you can't always predict. But staying in the same place has consequences too. They're just slower, less obvious, and a lot more expensive over time. I made my choice when I realized the cost of staying was higher than the cost of leaving. That calculation is different for everyone, but the principle stays the same. If something consistently takes from you without giving anything back, it's not something you need to fix. It's something you need to reassess. And if reassessment leads to action, then that action needs to be firm, not temporary, not conditional, consistent. Because consistency is what turns a decision into a boundary. And boundaries are what turn intention into real change. If you've made it this far, you didn't just listen to a story. You recognize something, maybe not in the details. Not everyone has a situation that extreme, but in the pattern. That part is universal. The dynamic where one person controls the narrative, where someone else is expected to stay quiet, where family is used as a reason to tolerate things that wouldn't be acceptable anywhere else. That shows up everywhere, in different forms, different levels, different environments, but the structure is the same, and once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. That's why stories like this matter. Not because they're dramatic, not because they feel satisfying at the end, but because they give you a framework to recognize what's happening in your own life. A lot of family stories don't end with accountability. A lot of family drama doesn't resolve cleanly. There's no operation. No clear moment where everything flips and everyone gets exactly what they deserve. That's real life. And that's exactly why the lesson matters more than the outcome. You're not watching this to learn how to take someone down. You're watching this to understand when you need to step out. That's the difference. If you're waiting for a perfect moment to fix everything, you'll be waiting a long time. Because situations like that don't fix themselves, and the people benefiting from them have no reason to change. So the question isn't, how do I make them understand? The question is, why am I still trying? That's where things start to shift. You don't need a big confrontation. You don't need to explain yourself in a way that finally makes them see your perspective. You don't need to prove anything. What you need is clarity. Clarity about what's happening, clarity about how it affects you, and clarity about what you're willing to accept moving forward. Once you have that, the next step is simple, not easy, but simple. You adjust your behavior, you change your access, you stop participating in patterns that don't work for you, and you let people respond however they're going to respond. That part matters, because a lot of people set boundaries and then immediately try to manage how others react to them. They soften it, they explain it, they apologize for it. And in doing that, they weaken it. A boundary isn't something you negotiate after you set it. It's something you hold. If someone respects it, the relationship continues in a healthier way. If they don't, the relationship changes. That's not failure, that's information. And information is what allows you to make better decisions going forward. The other thing you need to understand is this. Not every situation requires a response. Not every comment needs to be addressed. Not every slight needs to be corrected. Sometimes the most effective move is doing nothing. Not out of fear, out of control. Because when you stop reacting to everything, you start choosing what actually deserves your attention. That's how you conserve energy. That's how you stay focused. And that's how you avoid getting pulled into cycles that go nowhere. People will test you. They'll see if you're serious. They'll push the same buttons that used to work. That's normal. That's expected. The difference is you don't respond the same way anymore. And when that happens, the dynamic changes. Not because you forced it, because you stopped reinforcing it. That's how real change happens, not in one moment, but over time, through consistent decisions. And here's something else most people don't talk about. Walking away doesn't always feel good right away. There's no instant relief, no immediate sense of closure. Sometimes it feels empty. Sometimes it feels like you lost something. Even if what you lost wasn't good for you, that's part of it. You're not just stepping away from people. You're stepping away from a version of your life that you were used to. And that takes adjustment. But that space, that quiet, that's where things start to rebuild. On your terms. Without pressure. Without constant correction from someone else. That's where you figure out what actually works for you. Not what keeps everyone else comfortable. That's the trade. You give up familiarity. You gain control. And over time, that control turns into stability, then into confidence, then into something no one else can take from you. That's the long-term outcome. Not the moment at the gate, not the interrogation room. What comes after? What you build when you're no longer trying to fit into something that was never designed for you. That's the real win, and that's something you can apply no matter what your situation looks like. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about one story, it's about recognizing patterns, understanding dynamics, and making decisions that move you forward instead of keeping you stuck. That's why people watch these kinds of revenge stories, not for the revenge itself, but for the clarity that comes with it. So if this made you think differently about your own situation, about the way you handle pressure, or about the role you play in your own life, then take that seriously. Don't ignore it. Don't push it aside because it's uncomfortable. That discomfort is where change starts. And if you want more stories that break down real situations like this, stories that go beyond surface-level drama and actually show you what's happening underneath, make sure you subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about entertainment. It's about understanding the patterns behind family stories, the reality behind family drama, and how to take those lessons and use them in your own life. Some people spend years waiting for things to change. You don't have to.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.